If you can currently hear every single noise known to man right now, I apologize. I picked the worst time to record. Every single one of my neighbors wants to mow their lawn. Brilliant for me. In light of staying positive, I'm doing my best. We have two phenomenal things. Firstly, it is the 1 year anniversary of Chainsaw Man Part 2. Yes, it has been a year. It doesn't feel like it, but looking back on this story, it's come a long way. Secondly, this chapter is absolutely phenomenal. Beautifully handled. Beautiful character development. So much charisma, identity, every single describing word you ever want to use. Just a solid, fun chapter. A lot of humor in there too, split between a bunch of different characters, as well as vital information that I'm kind of conflicted about because there's too many agendas at play. Like Yoshida wasn't in this chapter and I already want to blame him. That's how much weirdness is currently here. So we found out a lot, lucky us. And with this information, we have a really great understanding of where the story kind of goes from here. It was kind of pivoting over the past couple of weeks. You didn't really have much clear perspective of its future narrative, but now this has cleared up a lot of our concerns, a lot of our ideas even, and is driving us towards a future that is a lot clearer. This is a great thing. The funniest thing about it, however, is that it's not actually driven by Nostradamus' prophecy. That is still well and truly in the background. It's just there. And I think that's a pretty good way to have it. We know it's dangerous. We know it comes with the age of devils and it's going to be cataclysmic. But for me personally, that has always felt like a result. The end of ends, the final conflict potentially of this story. How we get to that conflict, very different. I wasn't sure if they were going to use it to drive the story forward or if we were going to play on something else, and this is what we finally have. Asa, Yoru, Famine, Denji, beautifully handled in this chapter. Like there's so much just to dive into separately and I don't want to take up so much of your time, but this is really a chapter to sit down and kind of read for yourself and just experience the moment because it's super well handled structurally. There's a lot of humor within there, a lot of in the moment interactions. It just feels really nice. Asa, for example, is currently going through this motion of love. She's very much smitten by the actions of Chainsaw Man fighting so desperately to save her life. Now, I mentioned this prior that this would most likely happen to some extent. I wasn't sure on how Asa would potentially navigate her own feelings, but it's becoming very overwhelming for her, especially when someone like Yoru, being her counterpart, completely understands her mental and emotional state on what's actually happening. It becomes very conflicted. I love this duality between them because Asa barely ever recognizes herself on how she feels. Sometimes she might express things, but there's never really much exploration behind it. However, when you have someone that can question it, someone that can explore it for you, you jump over kind of the biggest, hardest hurdle in front of you, that scary unknown. Instead of choosing to plunge headfirst into these feelings yourself, ironically, the person that hates Chainsaw Man the most is also aiding to this type of love. Yoru tries to bash it down as much as possible. It's not too overwhelming, but it's very much don't fall for men so easily. He's done the bare minimum. You really got to stop thinking about him like that. Simple as that really, but it comes with this very la-la type tune. When you go through this chapter, you notice that Yoru is very different. She seems very uppity. She's kind of smirking. She's devouring plain bread and kind of has these weird grins every now and then. She's excited that war is on the horizon, and we find out that a lot of the Fall Devil's consequences has become a lot more drastic. We get better detail for it. So to put simply, with falls spawning into Earth, a lot of pockets around the globe experienced reverse gravity, caused a lot of destruction, made a lot of places around the globe a lot poorer. And in Yoru's words, when humans want money, they always go to war. So she's excited. All of that energy and that identity of war is going to fuel back into her and make her a lot more powerful. It seems like it's been a while since any sort of war has taken place, of course. This is coupled really nicely with a beautiful montage of Asa thinking about Chainsaw Man and kind of going through the motions of her being saved, so much so that she creates a poem, or recites a poem I should say, specifically around her and Chainsaw Man's interaction. It's super cringe, super lovey-dovey and kind of head over heels because she just genuinely cannot get the thought of Chainsaw Man out of her head, and the more that Yoru mentions it, the more that Yoru tries to bash it down, the more it flares up within Asa. I love this because obviously obviously it puts them in a very weird predicament. They want entirely separate things. How do we achieve one of, if not potentially both of their goals? That actually gets questioned and answered at the same time. However, the answer that you get is not from the people that you would think. It's from Fami, who somehow, some way manages to spawn into this room. They did not let her in. I don't think she scurried up the side of the building. I don't know how it's possible. For me, this is just on the nose hilarious. I love this. I adore it. There's no explanation. How did she get into the room? I don't know. The most plausible answer is that she spawned there. She can teleport, but it's funnier when you don't think about it because she's just casually sitting there. She's not trying to fight anyone. Yoru and Asa are on their guard like, how'd you get in? The doors are locked. And all Famine is asking is if she can eat this food. How can you not love her character? How can you not love this moment? However, she offers an interesting proposal, and I want to iterate she's talking about granting wishes while looking within the fridge for food. She reckons that she can grant both Asa and Yoru's independent wishes, and the way that she decides to do this is obviously with the Chainsaw Man Church, but also the fact that the Black Chainsaw Man and Red Chainsaw Man are very much different. This is the first time we're getting some sort of split between Chainsaw Man. It's always been Denji and then Chainsaw Man and then the final armor form all as one, but I guess we never really thought about how devils and even horsemen perceive them. We know that Makima, for example, lost to Denji because she didn't recognize him. They don't remember faces or appearances, they just remember the smell. So the Chainsaw Man that Yoru has obviously fought before and one that she has an agenda against is the Black Chainsaw Man, the full armor. The Red Chainsaw Man, however, is just Denji in his Chainsaw Man form. So Fami is here proposing that she can split the two and offer both results, but in a way that doesn't really make sense and is kind of a little bit concerning, conflicting, and even has an underlying agenda, at least in my opinion. Firstly, she notes that Denji has given up on fighting. This isn't necessarily true. She speaks like it's a fact, but this makes me believe that she's also working with Yoshida. There's no way that she would know this information. Yoshida believes that Denji has to do this because he threatened Naoyuta, but there's a little bit of murkiness there. We know that Denji doesn't really want to do that, but it's in this position of tinkering back and forth. He'll want to fight, he'll want to do things, but he's scared for Naoyuta and everyone else surrounding him. Hence why the previous chapter you had that self-reflection and that internal dialogue of him fighting his own wants and desires. It's difficult and easily be broken for him. I find it interesting that Famine uses the word problem when talking about Chainsaw Man's heart. She then goes to describe that even weakling devils can become powerful by eating strong devils of those who are feared. I don't want to use this as some sort of concrete explanation on where quote-unquote Chainsaw Man has come to exist, but this type of explanation has never been given to us before, at least I don't think so. In this context, it makes you think that the chainsaw devil, right, which we know would never be this powerful because it's just a chainsaw, has somehow ate whatever Pochita was, which in my opinion is currently extinction. If this were the case, hypothetically, this is kind of close to the idea that I originally proposed a while ago, except the opposite. My idea, to put simply, was that Pochita hid himself as extinction into the first devil that he came across. Because they don't recognize appearances and they go off scent, you can't necessarily hide from people. They would always be able to track him down. But it's funny when you notice that they're not necessarily sure on Chainsaw Man. And I think the identity of whatever Pochita was originally has merged with the Chainsaw Devil. Thus, he's very difficult to track. And the first time that he ever probably done it, he jumped off the radar entirely. There's a longer explanation for this, but to me, that's just the loose groundwork that I came up with. And if what Fami is saying is even remotely true, it could work out pretty well for him. It makes sense why someone like Pochita would want to hide in plain sight, just being a lower devil, even though he has the ability of erasing people from existence and being known as the hero of hell. But then one thing that really throws me off is that she mentions if everyone forgets about Chainsaw Man, he'll grow weak as a devil and then he can live an ordinary life. This is not true. For normal devils, yes, but for Chainsaw Man, the idea of fear is what propels Chainsaw Man to such a level of power. But it's not just from humans, it's also for devils. Now at this current time, there's only one thing that I think Fami is trying to do, because theoretically this wouldn't work with Denji's form. He cannot be forgotten because he's so feared already by the legacy of the hero of hell. She may want to split Denji away from Pochita, and she may have the ability to be able to do it. And I say that because the way that she has treated Yuko and has designed a lot of her followers and the whole starving method makes me believe that she has something similar to be able to create weapons of her own. It's just a loose idea, but I'm very skeptical. She's trying to convince both Yaru and Asa that she can provide both. And she mentions directly that the issue is that Chainsaw Man is the heart. If she can change that, if she can replace it with something else, like another devil similar to Yuko, there may be a way to make Denji turn back to normal, or at least not Chainsaw Man anymore. I love this setup because we still don't know the intent of Fami's ideas. Is she genuinely trying to help? And it sounds rather convincing that she is, but in reality there's a lot more here at stake, and this leads to an interesting conflict that is brewing. See, right at the end we see what Asa is capable of. She is the one that is currently convinced that she can help Denji and Chainsaw Man, so she's on board and she's going around slaying everything, all of these devils, so Denji doesn't have to, so much that she's now taking the credit of anything that Chainsaw Man has done as of recently. This is a problem. Denji does not like this because he sees it, and the one thing that he's always wanted is that fame, that attention, that understanding, that seek of acceptance. So he is upset. Inevitably, these two are most likely going to fight now. Fami has put a lot of things in motion, and while it's very chaotic and unsure, and Yoshida's in there as well, throwing curveballs, and then you have Nostradamus' prophecy, it's just so difficult to know anyone's agenda other than Denji and Asa's. And unfortunately, they're both being manipulated. We also have a chapter next week, but I would love to hear all of your thoughts. Leave a like, subscribe, comment. It supports me a ton, and I would greatly appreciate it.